There are so many video game franchises that just deserve a comeback. So today we're talking about 20 game franchises that need a comeback. This is actually part 2. We're talking about 20 more game franchises because there's a lot. Since posting our original video on this topic back in 2024, some of our wishes came true. Legacy of Kain getting a new game, Onimusha is getting something new, they finally announced a new Castlevania game, and we got Ninja Gaiden 4. But the monkey's paw also curled on some of our picks like Dino Crisis, which is getting a deluge of terrible spiritual successors that are no good, or that weird-looking Deus Ex Remastered that was delayed indefinitely. Still, in that last video, we got a couple of wins, so it's time to do it again, and maybe use a little bit of gameranx magic here to hopefully revive conversation around a few more seemingly dead franchises. Starting off at number 20, Killzone and Resistance Fall of Man, because there is a long list of Sony first-party franchises that have been left on the wayside. Just play Astrobot if you want a reminder. Not every game franchise deserves or needs a new entry. Not every franchise needs to be relevant beyond the time and place it originally came out, but out of all the Sony first-party franchises, we definitely think there's something still to be done with two of the big PS3 tentpoles. Guerrilla Games' Killzone and Insomniac's Resistance Fall of Man. These are sci-fi games with pretty wild different tones. Killzone is more of a space military shooter that had, at the time, some of the most cutting-edge visuals in the industry.
The holders of my dreams. Our forefathers embarked on the greatest exodus in the history of all mankind.
Resistance games were kind of like a mix of popular military shooters at the time and more old school sensibilities with health bars and a weapon wheel and exotic equipment. Okay, the second game was definitely Call of Duty inspired, but the first and the third were very different beasts. Just a cool brand. These franchises both had really entertaining multiplayer offerings and excellent campaigns. They were the total package back in the day, and you got a lot of value with each one. Guerrilla Games seems like they're just focused on Horizon now, and Insomniac has moved on to making Marvel games. At least they're still keeping Ratchet and Clank alive, but Resistance feels mostly forgotten these days, and that's a shame. Hey, at the very least, we would love to get like some sort of re-release collection or something so these games aren't trapped on the PS3. That's all we could really ask for. But anyway. Next at number 19, what started off as a spin-off of the Sierra Police Quest games actually eventually evolved into one of the best, most memorable tactical shooters back in the day. I'm of course talking about SWAT 4, which was developed by Irrational Games before working on BioShock. And this first-person shooter just holds up shockingly well, despite being like more than 20 years old now. It's a SWAT team simulator.
Open it. Go when ready.
Check. On it.
Police! Get down now! Go! Police! On your knees! Police!
Moving
Get
forward.
down!
Trailers. Clear.
And when we got a spiritual successor with Ready or Not, which was well made and brings some of its own innovations to the table, that game wasn't quite able to capture what made SWAT 4 so cool. There was this like detached coldness to the game with an emphasis on environmental storytelling too that made it kind of feel intentionally uncanny and a little sickening. Most tactical shooters can feel like a horror game at times with how you can suddenly die at any moment from a stray bullet, and that game really played it up without ever actually descending into any horror tropes.
Civilian is safe, secure. Entry team to talk. Civilian hit. In need of medical attention. Be ready.
The game also focused on proper procedure, where you had to collect evidence, and you're penalized for shooting suspects without cause. It's a game that needs a proper sequel. Look, I'm glad Ready or Not is carrying the torch, but a SWAT 5 would be pretty cool. Next at number 18, an obvious one, man. It's the Batman Arkham series. It's all rumors right now. This one might be happening, who knows? The franchise hasn't entirely disappeared. We did just get Batman Arkham Shadow recently, and that was amazing. And then Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, that was set in the Arkham universe, but those games are spin-offs, and it was a mess, and I don't count that one. Look, what I want, and I think everybody wants from Rocksteady right now, is just a new, proper Batman game. It doesn't literally need to be Arkham in the title, and at this point it doesn't need to be Rocksteady, but just a good new Batman game. It's actually been a long time since the last actual full game from the franchise. Arkham Knight came out in 2015. That was our first Before You Buy video we ever did, so it's been more than a decade. And even though that game still looks incredible, even now, imagine what a modern studio Arkham game would be like. Next at number 17, Quake. With ZeniMax filing for a new trademark, it seems more and more likely that a new Quake something is actually happening, but the question is like, what exactly will it be? This is a franchise that could go in a lot of different directions, and honestly, I'm okay with whatever they end up doing. I just want more Quake. Will they go in a Quake 1 direction with those influences and dimension hopping, or will it go back to the Quake 2, 4, the war with the Strogg stuff? Maybe it'll be like a new Quake tournament game and just focus entirely on multiplayer. Or maybe they'll remove multiplayer completely and just make it like entirely single player, like Doom the Dark Ages. I don't know. They could do anything with Quake as a franchise. It's hard to say what exactly the next thing could be, considering how malleable the series is. But I would love to see a revival in the same vein as like a Doom 2016 take that approach. Games like Space Marine 2 also have shown that this hybrid approach with like a campaign mode and attached multiplayer mode still works if both modes are actually good. After 3 Doom games, I think now is the time for the guys at id Software to try something different. Plus, it'd be awesome if they brought Trent Reznor back on the soundtrack. Next at number 16, it is kind of crazy how much Nintendo has dropped the ball on Star Fox. It's this iconic franchise, but somehow it definitively peaked way back on Nintendo 64. They never managed to make a game as good as Star Fox 64, and that alone is a crime because it seems like a formula that should be pretty easy to replicate, but it just never came together the same way again. The Star Fox drought is so bad that indies are being forced to put out their own takes with stuff like, check out Wild Blue Skies. It's undeniably impressive, and it could be a really good substitute, but what I really want is the real deal, a new Star Fox game that's just as good as the 64 one. I'm not asking for huge innovations. I don't need them to like radically reinvent the entire game, but just put out another Star Fox that's highly polished, a cool adventure, tons of replay value, and all will be right in the world, honestly. It's a short arcade-style shooter, so I get it, like it's a perceived lack of value there, but they could really do something special with it if Nintendo put some of their little magic to it, a creative spin on the formula. Next at number 15, Monolith made a lot of great games before their untimely closing, and many of those deserve some kind of comeback or revival, but the games that stick in our mind are mostly No One Lives Forever 1 and 2. Starring super spy Kate Archer, it's your job to take on the agents of harm and stop their many plans for world domination, while a lot of goofy stuff happens around you. These games were killer. If you liked Bond and cheesy old stuff, this is up your alley. These games have that distinct honor of being comedy games that manage to be both good FPS games and actually funny at the same time, just good spoof stuff.
Mother, we've been over this 1,000 times. I'm not coming home for Christmas.
You want to kill me like you killed your father.
Mummy, Daddy died of dysentery in Kenya.
The voice acting is excellent across the board, the visuals are colorful, and locations you explore are varied, and in the second game, the guard AI was like legitimately smart. Like they'd notice things like light bulbs being unscrewed or doors being opened, and the game forced you to actually be clever when you're sneaking around. So it was creative and fun, but it had the gameplay chops to back it up. And that atmosphere is so unique. We don't see games with this type of swinging 60s charm. Again, it's spoofing James Bond, and it could have felt very derivative in a post-Austin Powers world, but they managed to really have a cool wit that you rarely see in video games. Apparently the entire franchise is trapped in licensing hell, like nobody really knows who exactly owns the rights to the series, and nobody really seems to pay the money to untangle them in courts. Either way, I think it's like practically an impossible wish at this point to get a third game. This franchise is pretty forgotten about, but it would be really cool, please. Next at number 14, Infamous and Prototype. Now, in reality, these two games don't have a lot in common outside of being superhero games set in an open world. What connects them is their release date, and they came out in pretty close proximity to one another. So the gaming community kind of built a completely arbitrary rivalry between these two games, with people picking a side and fighting vigorously for their chosen game. A lot of it was console warring, you know. Infamous, I believe, was a PS3 exclusive, while Prototype was multi-platform, so that was on 360. Look, ultimately, they were both good games, with focused, tightly designed open worlds that didn't wear out their welcome. Infamous, of course, comes from Ghost of Tsushima developer Sucker Punch, while Prototype came from Radical Entertainment, who cut their teeth on games like Hulk, Ultimate Destruction. Another awesome, underrated superhero game. Now, while these games sound really similar, they're not really alike. Infamous is this open world, kind of third-person shooter, but you're shooting lightning wrapped up in a superhero shell, while Prototype is like, the Hulk was also the Thing. It was absurdly violent and gritty, and it reveled in non-stop chaos. Infamous at least managed to have a pretty good run with 3 games, but Prototype only got 2, and the second one altered the formula heavily, and then the franchise kind of fizzled out after that. Radical Entertainment was closed by Activision, while Sucker Punch now is still alive and well. They both kicked ass. We rolled them both into one just to make a point here about this style of game. It was a really good time. You had to be there, and I'd love to see them both return. Will they? Who knows? Next at number 13, Mech Assault. With the Mech Warrior license thriving on PC now, I think now is the time to bring back the pure stupid joy of the Mech Assault games specifically. These Xbox exclusives were developed by legendary studio FASA and the not so legendary Day One studios, which were very different beasts compared to their PC counterparts. They were arcade shooters, where the main games were more like flight simulators and a walking battle tank. They did something different and offered a more freewheeling and easygoing experience. Mostly, I just want a mech game that's not the ludicrous speed of Armored Core, but isn't the plotting, heat-sink watching, chassis customizing, hardcore experience of the Mech Warrior games. I just want to drive around big stompy mechs and level cities, and I want the production values to be cutting edge. Mech Assault is primed for that. I know the chances of this actually happening are slim to none, but I do think there is still absolutely an appetite out there for this style of game. Next at number 12, Oddworld. It's one of the most malleable franchises of all time, and it deserves a second chance at life. Actually, at this point, maybe a third chance. It seems like they kind of had one with the Soulstorm remake, but look, the Oddworld games are so visually distinct and mechanically unique. All the games in the franchise are all a little different. They all have their own quirks, but really it's the universe that these games are set in. The world of Oddworld is so creative and whimsical and weird and gross. We've never seen anything like it. And I think it manages to hold up. While you might look at first glance and think it's just really a product of like the late 90s, it's got so much more going on, and I really think we could see Oddworld in full form today, and I think it would land with people if done right. I really always just love the idea of a franchise essentially just being a setting and every game being something different. They originally had plans for even more wild genre shifts, like one canceled concept that was the Hand of Odd, which was going to be an RTS. Then you have, of course, the classic adventure-style Oddworld games. Munch's Odyssey is kind of its own weird thing. Stranger's Wrath is a first-person shooter. Imagine if they just kept doing stuff like that in this world. I don't even know exactly what I want to see in a new Oddworld game. I just want to see more of them. I want to be back in that world and that vibe.
Let's rock and roll, yeah! Rock and roll, yeah!
Next at number 11, the Perfect Dark reboot may have been canceled, but that doesn't mean I don't still want to see a new game in the franchise at some point. I know it's a fool's errand to talk about it now, after that was canceled and they like shut down that studio, but it can't be completely dead, even if the chances seem really, really slim now. It's a shame because while Perfect Dark Zero was not good, that first game was a real evolution of the GoldenEye formula. And if anyone actually managed to make a new game, then that's actually what I would lean into. The massive open levels with multiple objectives to complete in any order, the different objectives depending on the difficulty level. giving you some replayability, the cool gadgets, the sci-fi guns with the alt-fire modes. Come on, man. The multiplayer also is a must. It was GoldenEye, but with even better weapons, cooler level designs, highly adaptive bots. It would be nice to get a multiplayer mode that's disconnected from the hamster wheel that is modern multiplayer design. Look, I know this is all very unlikely to happen. It's pie in the sky stuff, but I'd love to see it. Next at number 10, Mother/Earthbound. Look, I know there are so many Earthbound-inspired retro pixel RPGs out there, but even to this day, there's nothing that pulls off what makes the original game franchise so compelling. A lot of them get close, but still, you can't beat the OGs. It's the nostalgic, quasi-modern day setting, the specific peculiarities of the writing that's quirky but also effortless, it's not trying too hard, the strange music, and the seemingly flat, simplistic visuals. These are games that thrive in mood and setting, and while they might seem easy enough for an amateur to replicate, time has shown that it's actually a lot harder to make one of these games. And Mother 3, a game still unreleased in the West, showed that the secret sauce of these games had to be the writing of Shigesato Itoi. His unique voice is what makes these games really something special, and without him, we kind of imagine it'll be difficult to get a potential fourth game off the ground. He's flat out stated that he won't be involved in a fourth entry in the series, and for a lot of people, that's the end of it. There will never be another game then, and if it is, it'll be kind of more like Earthbound in name only, but I'm not that skeptical about it. These games have inspired so many people. It's practically a subgenre all its own, so it'd be cool to see some hotshot new developer take their hand at it. There's gotta be someone out there who could make a potential fourth game that manages to capture the lightning in the bottle of the rest of the series. It's not guaranteed, not even likely, but it's something I would definitely like to see Nintendo attempt at some point. Next at number 9, Twisted Metal. The car combat genre needs to make a bigger comeback, and while there's been things here and there, we don't got anything like Twisted Metal now. There's a Twisted Metal TV show that just finished airing its second season, but there hasn't actually been a new game in the series since 2012. It's not like the concept of cars doing something they wouldn't normally do is a completely alien concept to the modern gamer. We have games like Rocket League that were a huge success, so who's to say how well a modern Twisted Metal game could do? These games are just entertaining as hell. They're very arcadey, they're fun to play, they're easy to pick up, hard to master. They'd make a perfect casual multiplayer game. I would hate to see this series go into free-to-play direction though. I think a new Twisted Metal would need to be your normal, standard, full-priced offering. Just stuff a lot of good content in here, good multiplayer modes, tons of modes, good maps, characters. Just make the whole thing one big celebration of the series' legacy. I think it'll still get new players. It'll probably never happen with modern Sony, but I don't know, who knows? Maybe the TV show showed them something. I'm hopeful that we haven't seen the last of Twisted Metal as a video game. Next at number 8, another monolith franchise that needs a new entry. It's Condemned. Yes, the second game took things in a worse direction, but if someone takes the Condemned ball and runs with it, then they don't have to make a direct continuation of the story. All it needs to do is hit the same beats as the original. It just needs to be a horror game where you explore uncomfortably realistic rundown buildings and fight off a bunch of crazed dudes using improvised weapons and brutal first-person combat. The tone of the first game got it right. That game went for kind of like a FBI procedural tone that was distant but unsettling, with a nice dash of Seven, the David Fincher movie. That's what a new Condemned game should be going for, rather than the grunge music video vibes of the second game. Not that the second game was completely bad or it had bad ideas. The improved combat was pretty cool, the finishers were awesome, the visuals were effective. It's just that some of the other goofier stuff doesn't work as well for what is supposed to be a pretty tight, kind of grounded horror franchise. Keep the investigation tools and the crime scene analysis and the bizarre serial killer angle. All that is appropriately disturbing, but some of the myth elements could be pretty easily cast aside, and I don't think anyone would mind. Basically, what I'm saying is make Seven a video game. That movie was awesome, the tone was absolutely perfect in Condemned, and now they just need to expand on it. Next at number 7, a dark and edgy take on Alice in Wonderland. Sounds like it could be kind of a corny thing, but the American McGee games somehow make it work. Despite the visual style looking like something that would, air in the 90s, these days, that's probably part of the appeal. That sort of intentionally twisted and ugly art style isn't something that you see all that much. These are games with a very simple premise that could be endlessly explored. I mean, the whole point of Wonderland is that it's a crazy place where anything can happen. Lewis Carroll only ever wrote, I think, 2 actual books in the series, so this isn't a Wizard of Oz situation where there's like a ton of material to draw from, but it's such an iconic series that could have easily explored more sides to this world if it was actually given the opportunity to do so. It's not likely to happen anytime soon though. Apparently American McGee, the main creator, has tried multiple times to revive the series, and it's been a series of non-starters. I don't know with this one. This is another one of those long shots that'll probably never happen. This series is most likely dead and buried for quite some time, but if someone, somewhere, were to get a new Alice game off the ground, then we would definitely check it out, just because it would feel different in the 2020s.
Pretty bears, like you.
Next at number 6, Left 4 Dead. They got it so right with this series, especially Left 4 Dead 2, and ever since, there's been nothing quite that reached the game's heights. Never in a million years would I have thought that the zombie co-op shooter genre peaked in 2009, but here we are, at least in our opinions, man. The game's developer, Turtle Rock, attempted to make a spiritual successor with Back 4 Blood, but it just wasn't the same. The original Left 4 Deads were just like fun games that players came back to again and again, simply on its own merits. No battle passes, no grinds, no content roadmap to keep you coming. The game was just solid. It was a simpler time for multiplayer games, but that doesn't mean all modern co-op games have to be super exploitive. Elden Ring Night Rain, for example, has some progression systems built in, but they're extremely tame as far as these types of games go. I can see a new Left 4 Dead incorporating some minor progression elements that give players something to strive for without it ruining the experience and exist just to be monetized. It really just boils down to if Valve wants to make it. And at this point, it's pretty clear that Valve only ever makes things if they really, really want to. They're still capable of making games, but it just doesn't happen that often these days. Next at number 5, Wild Arms. JRPGs are big business. So many of these games are getting cranked out year after year, and a lot of old franchises are new again with well-made remakes and revivals, like, Romancing Saga 2, a bunch of stuff. Wild Arms was never the biggest series of games, but its unique Western style made it stand out from the rest of the crowd, even when the Wild West aesthetic was mostly just cosmetic, which was honestly most of the time. Still, this series had charm, even if the games weren't always the best, and even in the lesser games, the music was always consistently fantastic. I just think we're long due for some kind of revival for these games.
Okay. You think you can stop me?
The obvious thing would be to remake the first game again, but we've already been down that road. I feel like making a new game would be better as an approach. Like just hone in on all the elements that make these games unique, like the focus on puzzle solving in dungeons, using the tools you unlock as you progress through the story. Like maybe they could incorporate the quasi-tactical battles of the later games where positioning is important. Look, either way, the music absolutely has to be incredible though. Next at number 4, the Mercenaries games. You remember this? It's a real disgrace that this franchise wasn't as big as it should have been. It could have been Just Cause, but with less parachuting around and more tactical missiles and strikes. The first Mercenaries game really was lightning in a bottle. It's a game that's kind of tough to go back to these days because it's pretty archaic as far as open world games go, but it had some incredibly satisfying ideas that we were in love with back in the day, and a new game could totally exploit those ideas. What's fantastic about these games is that they're open world games that just let your destructive side come out.
Support options are back online.
You can hijack APCs and tanks and helicopters. You can destroy buildings and call in airstrikes to destroy entire columns of enemies. You're like this literal one-man army, and it's extremely satisfying. I know the second game was in many ways a disappointment. It just wasn't as well designed as the first game, but that doesn't mean that the series should be completely shelved. Just do what Just Cause does. Invent some like made-up fictional country to invade and you're good to go. There's just something extremely satisfying about like calling in missile support or summoning a vehicle that drops down in front of you or throwing a guide beacon for artillery and watching all this destruction happen in front of you. The kind of quirky, weird characters, the incredible music. Mercenaries had all the sauce, and more games need to copy it. Or better yet, someone needs to come in and make a third game. With developer Pandemic gone and publisher LucasArts very different now, it does technically still exist as a licensor called Lucasfilm Games. Like, it's unlikely that we'll ever actually get a third game in the series, but hey, we can dream. Now at number 3, Klonoa. You can't blame Bandai Namco for trying with this one. They keep trying to revive this series, but for some reason it never quite takes. They've remade the first game twice, and the second game once, both times with the intentions of possibly continuing the series, but then they always underperform in some way, and the series gets put back in the vault. It's a shame, because the original versions of these games were so great. They may look like PlayStation's answer to Kirby, with their bright, cartoony, floaty visuals and kid-friendly, cel-shaded-ish graphics, but these games are a little more sophisticated than you might realize. They're story-focused, they weren't afraid to mix up traditional platforming with some tough puzzles and some more non-linear levels. These games are also some of the few like 3D side-scrollers to actually make good use of the 3D format. You actually twist around the world and take a meandering and sometimes unexpected direction through the stages. It's never just like a flat 2D plane with 3D characters. It was always more ambitious. Look, I know they tried. Maybe it'll still fail if they brought it back. Like, maybe people just don't care about Klonoa, but I like to think that there's an audience out there for a potential third game. The developers just need to find them. Now at number 2, I can't believe we didn't mention this in our first video, but Sly Cooper. This is another orphaned Sony series that just needs one more go around. I don't even care about resolving the cliffhanger at the end of Thieves in Time. That doesn't even matter anymore. Just make a new game where you're doing the same old cartoon-inspired heisting, and we'll be happy. This franchise has so much personality and character to it. The main cast are instantly recognizable and can just fit into any good situation. The gameplay was silky smooth. I know the later games got a little too crazy with the gimmicks, but still, the core stealth combined with the platforming felt good, as did the Telltale Sucker Punch love of physics objects, which were everywhere in these games and made the platforming feel more tactile and unique compared to other game series. It's a shame that we'll probably never get another one of these from Sucker Punch, who have straight up admitted that they can't work on more than one game at a time, and they seem like they're growing up and making more realistic games, kind of like how Naughty Dog doesn't make Jak and Daxter anymore. Look, there doesn't seem to be much of a future for this franchise with Sony. They aren't really interested in continuing it as a publisher, I don't think, and the original developer has clearly moved on, but still, I think there's a lot of potential here with this series, especially in a world where the top grossing Disney animated movie of all time is a, an anthropomorphic animal cartoon. There's a scenario where a new Sly could could make big money. Sony just needs to finally give the green light and make it happen. Who knows? Now down at number 1, oh boy, of course, SimCity needs a comeback, man. Come on. There are so many examples of like the destructive power of Electronic Arts, from Ultima, Command & Conquer, Dead Space, Dungeon Keeper, Medal of Honor, sort of Need for Speed. The list goes on. It's a graveyard. All these games deserve a comeback in some way. They were so poorly served, but you know, SimCity and how that was botched, I really want another go at it. SimCity was the premier city builder game and one of the most successful PC franchises of all time. Legendary games, the original SimCity, SimCity 2000 are some of the most beloved. So why isn't there a new entry in this series coming out every few years like Civilization? Hell, now there are more Tropico games than SimCity games. Yes, we had the abysmal SimCity revival in 2013, but one bad game shouldn't kill a franchise, especially one this big. They ran away with their tails between their legs, but these days, city builders and strategy games are a booming business. There's absolutely room out there for a new SimCity. It's just that nobody's left to make it. Maxis has kind of given up on making anything but I guess like Sims 4 content. I don't know. I expect that we'll get a new game eventually someday. I think the branding is just too potent for to be completely forgotten and cast aside, but that won't happen until EA fully gives up and maybe actually like licenses it out and gets a good developer to work on it and try not to do it internally. Look, I don't know. I wish I could say that I want a new SimCity game from Maxis, but they've moved on. It's like a different studio now. Still, the SimCity brand could be strong. It should be the best. It should be the top like it was once. And I'd love to see it return to its former glory. How? We don't know, but yeah. Anyway, those are 20 game franchises we think deserve a comeback. Again, this is a part 2 of an ongoing series, so let us know in the comments some games you think should return, some games worthy of a revival, whether it's the gameplay mechanics, the lore, an unfinished story, whatever. Let us know in the comments. If you like this video and you like talking games with us, clicking the like button's all you gotta do. It really helps us out. And if you're new, consider subscribing, maybe hitting that notification bell, because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.